What's going on, everyone, and welcome into another episode of Expected Bets 4. We're chugging along on our team previews, and today's episode will be covering the Florida Panthers. Before we get into that, let's bring in the rest of the crew. Betsky, you got the Florida shirt on right now,
Yep.
repping the Stanley Cup champions. How's it going?
Good. Yeah. Ice Cats are kind of my team in the East. So I had a lot of fun, obviously, with that run last season and got to enjoy that last game 7. Fantastic, Stanley Cup finals, too. I mean, just a cool way to watch two very different teams play against each other. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about Panthers and let's see if they can repeat.
Yeah, it should be interesting. Franco, how we doing out there in Philly?
Doing pretty good, man. This team's exciting because it doesn't feel like they lost much. And usually we're talking about these defending Stanley Cup teams, and we're worried about all the pieces they were unable to bring back. And this is not the case here. I mean, they lost some pieces, but I still think this is a pretty damn good team that's going to contend.
Yeah, I would say so. All right, let's get into the team preview for the Florida Panthers. Obviously, like we stated earlier, they are the defending Stanley Cup champions. Finished the season with 110 points. Franco, I'll start with you here. Just get right into it. A few new additions here. They bring over Thomas Nosek from Nashville. They bring over Jesper Boquist, Adam Boquist, Nate Schmidt, Chris Dreiger, and AJ Greer, to name a few of those key pieces. In terms of kind of replacing the players they've lost, what are your thoughts on the additions they've made this offseason?
Well, I'll start with goaltender. I'm pretty excited about the Dreiger ad. They lose Stolar, so I feel like it's a pretty comparable ad back. He used to play for Florida a couple of years back. Did really well in the AHL for the Kraken last year and in his spot start. So I really like that addition. And if Knight's back too, I mean, it feels like they have a decent backup tandem behind Bobrovsky, which feels good on the surface. Defensively, I like the Schmidt ad. I like him. He's a really good defensive defenseman with a decent shot and just a big body that's prototypical what we've been expecting from Florida at this point. Just those big body type of hard to play against guys in the back end, which they kind of needed somebody like that to replace all the kind of bigger body pieces they've lost. So like that a lot. And then it feels like the additions are kind of ho-hum on the fourth line, checking line type guys, but yeah, I mean, I don't feel like they really like lost anybody really big in that forward group. So these guys are kind of just like for me. Nosek is decent. Boquist has had some decent time as well. I like the addition of Adam Boquist as well on the blue line. He's still young, former first round pick, so maybe he can kind of get something going and become something. We haven't really seen it yet, and I feel like he's been on some kind of mediocre teams. He went to Boston last year. He didn't get much run there, but yeah, I think in a sheltered role on this team, he could probably thrive.
Yeah, Betsky, speaking of departures, Brandon Montour, Tarasenko, OEL, Stolart's cousin, and Zaposo out the door. In terms of kind of that key piece Florida's going to be missing this season out of that list, who do you think that's going to be?
Well, the easy name to think about there is Brandon Montour, but
yeah,
we were all just kind of looking at his stats season to season, and he has one major outlier, which kind of surprised me. I thought he was a little bit more productive throughout his career, but the only time he's had more than like 35 points was 2 seasons ago with the team where he had over 70. So talk about a jump and maybe a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde type player where, I mean, he's always been somewhat productive. He's always been a decent two-way guy, but I think maybe we've all been a little bit blinded by that one humongous season he had. And what Forsling was able to do in the playoffs, I think really made the Panthers a little bit more comfortable with allowing Montour to walk in free agency. I think they had to make some decisions. Obviously, they wanted Reinhart. I was under the impression that maybe they'd move on from Sam Bennett to get that extra $4.5 million of cap space to maybe find a way to make Montour work as well to fit under the cap and move Lundell up to that second center. But they moved on from Montour. Obviously, that's going to kind of hurt that blue line a little bit. In the end of the day, I think the combination of losing OEL plus Montour is the real hit here, rather than just the individual piece on both of the sides there. But I still think they got a solid blue line. Ekblad has been a top defender before. I think he's been a little bit up and down recently, but I still think he has a lot of gas left in the tank. I mean, this is only a 2014 draft pick, so he's same age as Sam Reinhart, same age as Sam Bennett. They were all in the same class, all top 5 picks. The only one I think they're missing in the top 5 is Draisaitl, if I remember correctly. Montour or Ekblad, Reinhart, Bennett. I guess they're got to be missing someone else, and I want to say it's Michael Dowcall, but he's not in the NHL anymore. So
they could get him though.
Yeah,
they could collect them
if
all.
They want them. Yeah,
they can't get Draisaitl anymore.
No.
But this has been a team that's been able to kind of plug and play defensemen for multiple seasons now. I don't think anybody saw Montour becoming a 70-point guy a couple seasons ago, and there he did it. Mikkola kind of came out of nowhere last season and had a very good season for the team. I think Schmidt has a lot to prove. He's a warrior type player. He kind of feels like the signing of OEL last season, where he can step up and play big minutes for the team and play a good role. It's the type of team where everybody fits the role they're asked to play and excel at that. 2 seasons ago, they lost Gudis. They just rolled right through it and found a similar player in Mikkola. Maybe Boquist is going to be that new Montour for them. If one team and one coach is going to be able to find the best out of some of these players and be able to plug and play, it's going to be Maurice.
Yeah, I would agree. As you mentioned before, Sam Reinhart signs a massive extension with the Panthers, along with Lundell and Kulikov. Franco, their top 6 remains pretty much intact here. Kind of going along with that Montour, let's say, role. He had a breakout season this year, finally scores 50 goals. He always showed potential, especially was on the Sabres. Kind of him and Eichel were those 2 guys that were really the spark of that offense back in the day. But going forward into this year, what's your expectations for this offensive core that Florida has?
I mean, that signing of Reinhart is just ridiculous, isn't it? I think everybody thought he was going to walk and they wouldn't be able to afford him, and they got him for a hell of a deal, 8 years.
No state tax. He gets a hell of a deal too.
Crazy. There was that whole thing going around. Everybody was bashing and saying, "Oh, no state tax. Nobody's ever going to go to Canada," and all that fun stuff. But I mean, look at this team. I mean, basically their top 9 is pretty much intact. Obviously, they lose a winger, but in reality, it's pretty much all intact. And that's just a hell of an accomplishment by this team and their management group to be able to make it fit and make it all come back together. So what changes? You know what I mean? I would think we would see some sort of regression from Reinhart. That was just an unbelievable year, but how much of a regression? 40 goals?
He's still paired up with Barkov and Verhaeghe. Exactly, like it's not like that line's lacking talent.
Exactly. It's not like he lost a passer that's a playmaking center. He's got one of the best in the league with Barkov. So I mean, if anything, Verhaeghe scores more goals. This team just has so many places that it can get playmaking and goal scoring from that forward group that it's just, like I said, I mean, where's the negative about it after coming off a Stanley Cup win? Usually you can find those spots, and I just don't see much of it. So good on them for keeping it together.
Yeah, I think that Thomas Nosek signing's kind of going onto the radar too. I think he's going to be a fantastic piece on that 4th line for the Panthers. I think that was a steal of a pickup. Especially to be able to replace Stenlund, who had a really great season as kind of that gritty 4C who does all the dirty work. So it's just one in or one out, one back in. Yeah. Nosek was like Nashville's 2nd or 3rd line center too, I believe.
Yeah, for a reason, but
we'll get to Nashville.
So we know he can defend, and he's played the role plenty on a few teams now at this point. So it's a good signing. I agree.
But even going back into Reinhart regression territory, if he doesn't have 50 goals, and let's say he has, I don't know, 14 less goals, which still seems, puts him in the 36 territory, which is great. Matthew Tkachuk had, guess how many goals less this season than last season? 14.
Wow. Yeah.
So he went from a 40-goal season, 109 points, and 79 games played 2 years ago. And last year he played 80 games, had 26 goals and 88 points. So even if you get some regression in someone like Reinhart, who had a hell of a season, maybe one of those other guys goes back up. The scales will be able to tip a little bit. So there's room for this top six to still be ultra productive. Maybe find another guy who hits a career point total, and maybe that's Barkov this
Especially
year.
if
Maybe that's
Lundell moves up to that top line. They bump Bennett down, and now Lundell's the new guy that he could take a step forward. He just got a big contract as well, 6 years. So.
Yep.
Would it be crazy to say Rodriguez after his playoff performance?
That's kind of what I'm wondering. Rodriguez could have a really big season. Yeah.
Again, these guys are playing with such talented players around them. It doesn't take much to just be productive. You're a talented player as it is. Like, you're surrounded with Bennett and Tkachuk, you're going to score goals. It's just going to happen.
Yeah.
And I believe a lot of projections have Sam Oskevich in the top 9, right? Who's
they have him on the wing with Lundell and Luosterainen. So,
and would this be his rookie season then?
Technically, I don't think he played enough last year, but everything I was reading was like Florida Panthers Twitter last year was hyping this guy up insane.
Yeah,
that they were very excited for him to get on the team, and whenever they were had injuries and stuff like that. So if this, I mean, who knows what this guy's going to be too?
I know.
Just imagine if he's productive. That's just not even fair.
Yeah, it's not like he's playing with he's not playing with terrible people either, with Lundell and Luosterainen on that third line too. So, but going to kind of their defensive core, I guess that's taken the biggest hit this offseason. Forsling, Ekblad kind of headline that top 6. Bobrovsky stays, and Spencer Knight may return as well, which could be an interesting piece that even helps this Florida squad even more. So Betsky, I'll throw it to you. If Bobrovsky does kind of have a little bit of regression and Spencer Knight steps up, this team seems pretty primed to have another run.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that tandem could be a special one. I think it went from 2 seasons ago wondering how the hell they're going to buy out Bobrovsky.
Yeah.
To now Bobrovsky is a shoo-in to be a Hall of Famer now. And now they got a kid who, if Bobrovsky takes a step back, is ready to start taking on that workload. So they're positioned to be really good and transition out of the Bobrovsky era. If Knight can live up to his expectations, holy cow. I mean, it's just, and they're in such a prime spot to be kind of, I don't want to say the D word, but almost a dynasty maybe. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it has the same glitter that Tampa or Chicago had back when you could argue that they were one, but they may have more longevity with what they have on this roster and the pieces they can kind of move around and shuffle and still be very, very good.
Yep. Before we get into the best and worst case scenario for the Florida Panthers, I'd like to talk to you about our sponsor, BetterHelp. This episode of Expected Bets 4 is brought to you by BetterHelp. Have you ever stopped to think about something new you'd love to learn? As adults, we don't always make the time to learn we used to when we were kids. Kids are constantly exploring and growing, but somewhere along the way, life gets busy and we lose some of that curiosity. What's something you've been wanting to dive into? Maybe it's cooking, picking up a new language, or even figure out your golf game to finally beat your new friend. Just because we're older doesn't mean we have to stop growing. In fact, therapy can help you reconnect with that sense of wonder. It reminds you that your back-to-school moment can happen at any time. Therapy is not just for people who have gone through something major. It's for anyone looking to be the best version of themselves. Therapy can help you learn positive ways to cope with stress, set healthy boundaries, and tackle challenges with more confidence. It's really about giving yourself the tools to thrive and grow, no matter what stage of life you're in. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/THPN today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/THPN. Now back to the show. Looking at the best and worst case scenarios for the Florida Panthers, Betsky, the best case scenario seems pretty obvious, but I will let you have it. I think it's Stanley Cup or bust for this team again, just given the roster they have.
Totally. I mean, imagine if two Florida teams, Sunbelt teams, are the teams that win cups back to back and go for a three-peat down the road.
Crazy.
The Canadians will be crying. All the Canadians up north just will not be able to handle it. All the controversy about no taxes and everything will constantly get brought up, but I'm here for it. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, all the memes of the Florida Panthers stadium, 5-6 years ago, of it being pretty much 90% empty are just out the window at that point. So
Totally.
Yeah, the hockey Twitter community in Canada is going to have to find some new material, I guess. Franco, in terms of worst case scenario, seems like it's going to be they miss the playoffs, but I don't even know if that's on the table.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think that's possible.
I don't think so either,
based on what they have. But I mean, I think the one thing is, right, they played a lot of hockey the last couple of years, lots of long series. That does wear on your body. They could start to have injuries, stuff like that can happen. So that was kind of like the thing that Tampa was able to really work through. And like Tampa played so much hockey during that run, and they just fought through it and were able to replace guys. It was pretty impressive how they did it. So, I mean, I think that's it. And then the other thing is Bob. I mean, like you said earlier, Betsky, we were just a couple of years ago saying, how the hell are they going to get rid of this contract?
Yep.
Goalies, I mean, we've said it 1,000 times on this podcast. They're voodoo, right? Like,
yep.
1 year to the next, you do not know what you're going to get. And this is why, like, you can't give up on a goalie early, and you got to kind of like ride it out once you find a guy that you like as a franchise. And you need to hope that they catch fire when the rest of the team's good, because otherwise you're just screwed. But yeah, I mean, he's had a hell of an up and down career. You know, he won the Vezina back in his Columbus days, and then kind of fell off a little bit in between there. And now he's back to being this goalie that we're considering one of the best in the league. So what is it going to be this year? Who knows? So that I think that's probably your worst case, is Bob kind of falls off and Knight's not ready and Drieger's not probably ready for like a full-time workload or anything like that. So
yeah, first round exit is probably your worst case scenario, right?
Yeah, you would think so. Before we get into some season, team, and player futures, I'd like to talk to you about our sponsor, DraftKings. NFL Week 1 is here, and a new season means new ways to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like picking a player to score a touchdown. The NFL season kicks off on Thursday night with the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Baltimore Ravens. The Chiefs are currently favored by 3, with the total being set at 46.5. If you're looking to place your bet on Week 1 NFL action, head over to DraftKings. Ready to do a touchdown dance of your own? Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the best place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $250 in bonus bets when you just bet $5 and get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium on us. Only at DraftKings, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in New Hampshire, Oregon, and Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball. NFL Plus Premium offer available only to new and former NFL Plus subscribers. Additional NFL Plus Premium terms at nfl.com/terms.
Getting into the Florida Panthers team futures here, their regular season points is at 102.5. Franco, you brought up an interesting point in our last segment. We talked about Tampa, about how they played so much hockey kind of during that 3-year stretch. And you kind of saw them, especially in that second and third kind of years of that run, really kind of take it a little bit easier during the regular season. You kind of bring up more questions about them heading into the playoffs, and they would just come out and dominate in the playoffs. They knew what they had to do. They're a veteran team, experienced in the postseason. 102.5. They had 110 last year. What are your thoughts on this team prop here for the Florida Panthers?
It feels a little short. I think in general, we all kind of agree that this division seems to be getting a little bit tighter, at least in the middle of it. But I still feel like this is the top of the division, this team in particular. And I think they can still beat up on these lesser teams. I don't see a reason why they can't do 1 of 3.5 or 1 of 2.5 and get 1 of 3 or more. And there's probably still another year away. Like if they do repeat this year, maybe next year's that year when you go on and under for them because they might take it easy. I don't see them fully taking it easy this year and taking it for granted at this point. They're still a relatively new playoff team when it really comes down to it. That 1 year, 2 years ago was back. It was just a miracle run, it felt like, right? When they got all the way as far as they did. So it's not like they've been in the playoffs every single year, and this is expected at this point. I still think they have something to prove. So I can see them going on.
Yeah, and that forward core still is kind of, I guess, relatively young enough to be able to handle kind of the quick transition of the offseason. Betsky, I don't think we need to talk about the playoff odds, -500 for yes, +370 for no.
Yeah.
I just think that bet's off the table, but we can talk about the division odds. They're +235 to win. They're the current favorites in the Atlantic. Short price for sure, given kind of a few of the other contenders, as we mentioned, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Boston Bruins sitting right there behind them. 235 still seems like a pretty good price, though, doesn't it?
It seems pretty decent. I think that, again, we've mentioned it in every team preview in this division. I think it's going to be one of those ones that eats itself quite a bit. I was just kind of looking through the standings. It was definitely the tightest last season. It had the lowest. I'm trying to think of how to wordsmith this. The worst team in the division was better than the worst team in all other divisions by 10 points. So the gap is a lot smaller, and I think that gap has decreased this season. But that doesn't mean that Florida can't take the top spot here. I may shop around for better odds, but to double your money on something that you got to feel pretty good about, personally, I think it's between them and Toronto. So
you have to think this price is only going to get smaller too as the season progresses.
Now, they could come out slow after the Stanley Cup hangover, so you may be able to kind of wait a little bit and maybe try to get a little bit better of a price. I'd like to look at their schedule too and see if they're starting off on maybe a long road trip or something like that, or if they have a particularly tough schedule to begin with. Maybe that's where you wait and see and try to get a little extra value out of it. But ultimately, I don't hate it at all. The conference one scares me a touch.
Okay, I had an opposite take on that.
Okay. I think there's a chance that maybe you could get a little bit better value again if you wait a little bit. Plus 550 for something that, it's going to be very injury dependent and you got a long road to get to. I don't know.
So my thought on the conference, obviously, you look at the teams in the East here. They're one of them now more experienced teams in the postseason.
Mm-hmm.
If you grab them at 550 to win the conference, they're pretty much, I don't want to say the G word, but they're guaranteed essentially kind of to make the postseason as we see this season progressing. If you grab them now at plus 550, that now opens your kind of your outs. Let's say you have a number of outs that you can now take, kind of a few hot teams coming into the playoffs to kind of hedge your bet a little bit. So plus 550, I don't hate if you get this team to win the conference at all. That was my kind of reasoning behind it, was you can then sprinkle on 2 or 3 other teams as well. And then even if they do make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, they're likely going to be favored in that too, that series.
All right.
Yes, especially if you're thinking they win this division, right? Like you got to figure they're going to have home ice. They're going to be one of the top ranked teams in the conference, so they're going to have a lot of advantages. Getting their path should be relatively easier than if they're a Toronto or Boston that's kind of getting in at a lower seed. So kind of think about that as well.
Yeah,
That's very true.
Even if they lose the division, I'd be more confident in their conference to win just based on kind of the first round matchups they have, even if they do grab that second spot in the Atlantic. It's currently 10-1 to win the Stanley Cup. I think they're the favorites, if I'm looking at that correctly, or one of them. Franco, are you touching this at all, or is this going to be kind of a wait and see?
Yeah, so they were the second best odds.
Okay.
Edmonton actually had better odds than them, believe it or not. So, I mean, it's not terrible odds, I guess. You know, you can grab a little sprinkle of it now, and
yeah,
I think I'm more bullish on this team as far as this division goes than I think at least Betsky is. Like, I think that they look great on paper right now. They have the experience, like you said. They have a hell of a goaltender. They have great forward depth. Like, these are the things you want. They have great center depth. I mean, we can't say that the same thing about some other teams. I feel like center depth is one of those things that just, if you don't have it, it really wears on you as the season goes on and as the playoffs go on. This team has such good depth right now. At least, you know, obviously we're saying they're healthy right now. Who knows what's going to happen? This hockey season is long and injuries can derail any bet like this. But yeah, I mean, this is one of at least my favorites right now, breaking down this division at least to get there at least. So I don't mind the prices and grabbing a little bit of it right now.
Yeah. Getting into some player futures for this team. Let's start with the points. Barkov is set at 83.5, Verhaeghe at 70.5, Kachuk at 96.5, and Sam Reinhart at 81.5. Those are the current lines they have on DraftKings. Franco, I'll throw it back to you. Any one of those jump out kind of immediately, or are you kind of staying away from the player point props for the Panthers?
I feel like it's hard to tell what the lines are going to be as the season progresses, but I think that Verhaeghe being at 70.5, if he's really going to stay on that top line with Barkov and Reinhart, again, like I want to grab the guy with the lowest number in this scenario because he's playing on the top line. He's going to get plenty of opportunities. Like, and again, we could see that swing away from Reinhart. Maybe it's instead of it being Reinhart with 50 goals, it's Verhaeghe getting 40. And then if he gets 40 goals, he's well on his way to 71 points. So I could see a path like that where we do see a little bit of shift away from Reinhart and somebody else picks up the slack on that first line. And if it's Verhaeghe, I mean, you're getting a hell of a number compared to the other numbers that we're seeing here.
Yeah, Betsky, did you have any plays on the player futures for the Panthers?
Yeah, that Barkov one's tempting, but he's actually only hit it twice in his career. And he has a bigger center. He plays really tough assignments. He is prone to miss games. So that does worry me a little bit. I definitely like that Verhaeghe look. And then I would say the other one that I would be most willing to dabble in would maybe be the Tkachuk one. I know that's a high point total, but he had a little bit of a regression last year and has had multiple 100-point seasons under his belt. So if you think that he's going to kind of bounce back, that's a nice bet there.
Yeah, he did miss 2 games as well and still had how many points? 88. And so they're projecting him
season.
88.
Yeah, but I felt like they kind of shuffled the lines up a little bit more. And obviously Reinhart had a hell of a season. And I think maybe that was kind of where a lot of the points that Tkachuk lost kind of were given to someone else, let's say.
I like it. Well, you wish we had lines on Rodriguez at this point too, kind of given our team preview. But
yeah, if we get like a 68.5 or something like that, or I'd like that.
That would have been a fun one. Player goal props, Barkov's listed at 24.5, Verhaeghe at 34.5, Kachuk at 38.5, and Sam Reinhart at 39.5. We'd mentioned that we kind of see a little bit or slight regression for Sam Reinhart after his breakout season. 39.5 still seems kind of low. 10 goal difference here. The lines, like you said, can shift as the season progresses here. But outside of that, if the lines do stay the same, seems like he should be able to at least put up 40 again. Betsky, do you have any thoughts on that one?
Oh man, that one
one.
worries me a little bit. Yeah, his next best season after the 57 goals last year was 33, his first year on the Panthers. So that one gives me pause. I mean, I think that it seems like a pretty fair line. 10 or 17 goal regression seems like something that he could easily pass, especially now that he's got a couple seasons with chemistry under his belt with Barkov. That Verhaeghe one is the one that speaks to me, though. If I'm going to take one, that's the one I want. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether or not he's on the top line or if he's playing again with the Tkachuk on the second line, I just like your options there.
Yeah, Franco, is that you had Verhaeghe in mind as well?
That's where I'm going. Yeah, he had 34 last year and 42 the year prior. So
yeah,
I feel like it's like right in the middle. He should land like right in the middle of that, right? 38, 39 goals. I could certainly see that. He was a guy we were betting a ton of 2 years ago to score goals night in and night out. So, and he's that clutch player. So I like him there.
Yeah. Barkov over 24.5. I don't have his stats pulled up from seasons prior, but we're going to get into in a second with the Selke, but it seems like that's a little high. If I'm remembering things correctly, at 24, he had 18 last year.
He's done it 5 times in his career.
Okay,
yeah, 23
last year,
both 2 years in a row.
Okay, yeah, maybe not then. That's kind of a stay away spot. Now that you brought that up, getting to some team or player awards, the Rocket, Richard, Reinhart, Tkachuk, Verhaeghe, and Barkov are all on the board for the Panthers. Any biters?
I mean, gosh, Verhaeghe at plus 15,000.
That's why I listed it. I listed it because it's crazy. I mean, the odds are crazy, but I can't. I feel like
it's just it's got to be somebody who's been able to hit 50 at least once, but it's not the one I want to dabble in.
Yeah, in terms of the Art Ross too, Tkachuk is the lowest as the lowest odds in terms of the Panthers at 75-1. We kind of had projected a bounce back here, but again, it's so tough in that market given the past few years of McDavid, Draisaitl, and Kucherov. So I'm staying away from that one. Or any of you guys taking?
That would be the one I would maybe consider between that and the Rocket Richard would be Tkachuk here, because you're getting a decent price on it, 75-1, and it's he could be a guy that puts up 120 points. I mean, it's not that crazy. I think he's talented enough, and McDavid has had injuries historically, right? Like we're and same for Draisaitl. I know, like, you look at those guys and you're like, how can anybody surpass them? It's not that difficult. If Tkachuk stays healthy and puts it all together, he could be right up with those guys.
Yeah. Anyone taking anything in the Hart or the Norris here? So in the Hart, Tkachuk is at 40-1, Barkov's at 100-1, the Norris, Forsling at 100-1, and Ekblad at 300-1. I think we're all pretty much passing on those unless anyone's got a long shot.
Again, it's like the defensive award that goes to the offensive defenseman. Right?
Yeah.
If it was a defensive award that goes to defenseman, Forsling would be pretty tempting, but
the two awards that now get interesting for the Panthers, Vezina, Bobrovsky listed at 20-1 here. Doesn't seem like terrible odds, but again, can he kind of repeat that playoff performance? Betsky, is this something you're interested in, or is this going to be a pass?
I think this is going to be a pass for me. I got some names circled already, and I'm tempted here. I think you're getting good value. I do think this is a team. I mean, they're positioning themselves to maybe take the load off a little bit with 2 capable backup goaltenders. So, maybe they play him a little bit less this season and just get him primed for playoffs. And maybe that's the strategy here. So, it's not something I want to jump on.
Yeah. In terms of the Selke, Barkov plus 130 is the favorite. He won it last year. Franco, are you taking it or no?
Those odds are so bad, man. For a trophy that's so up to, like, just not stat based, like I said previously. There's like so much that goes into it. It's not just clear cut. Like, how the hell are you going to lay a plus 130 there? I can't. As much as I like Barkov to be that type of player that could be the next like Bergeron award type where, you know, he wins multiple times, I just at plus 130, no way now.
Yeah, Barkov's already won it twice, but agreed at 130 in terms of an award. I'm not touching that at all. All right. Any last thoughts on the Florida Panthers? I think we're pretty high on this team, and deservedly so. But I'll start with you, Franco. Closing thoughts.
Yeah, I think sky's the limit kind of for this team, and if they can really keep healthy in this year and Bobrovsky doesn't turn into a pumpkin, so to speak, like this team could repeat, and they're built as well with the contracts they've signed with the like key pieces here that we could be talking about them in the same kind of light next year as well. So it's pretty scary to think about for the rest of the teams in this division and the East in general.
Yeah, Betsky, do you have anything else to add?
Just go Ice Cats. Let's do the repeat.
Love it. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for listening to today's episode of Expected Bets 4. As always, we're presented by the Hockey Podcast Network. Be sure to check out our socials on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.